So we've been teed up perfectly by Tom's session with Barry, Stephen and Alessandro. And the audience poll on the tech area that's changing live sports production with cloud production, remote and flexible workflows, just edging out AI and automation at the top. So hopefully you can all add a bit more detail to what was discussed during that session. So during this panel, we're going to explore how software-based workflows are changing the way we produce and deliver sports content, how embracing these technologies can enhance flexibility, scalability, and cost efficiency, some real-world use cases, some practical steps to future-proof production pipelines, and emerging standards as well. So let me just introduce the panel to you all. Just next to me, we have Mike Lethem. Mike is Sky Sports Software Operations Manager. And just next to Mike is Peter Brightwell, BBC R&D Lead Engineer. And then just in the middle there, we have Mike Deppe. Mike is IMG Technical Producer Studios. And at the end, we do not have Jean-Louis, because Jean-Louis was not able to make it, unfortunately. So we've got a proper 90th minute substitution. So stepping in at the very last minute is Paul Marsden, VP Sales. So Paul, thank you very much for taking Jean-Louis' place.
Very welcome. No preparation, let's see how this goes.
Yes, exactly, yeah. You'll be fine, no problem. So I mentioned the poll that took place earlier that mentioned, it was about the technology that's changing live production. And I think, focusing on that word changing, it's very much a suggestion that this is in progress. So I just wanted to start off with a kind of stock take, if you will. What's the current status? How far along are broadcasters in replacing traditional OB and MCR workflows with their software equivalents? Mike, we'll start with you as you're closest.
I had a feeling you would. Look, I think from our perspective, it's not a wholesale replacement. It's augmenting what we already do. It's adding another layer to that. It's all about giving us the tools to create the content. And we've already heard today that it's finding ways to get that content out there when there's rights deals that we're not really servicing. And I think that is what it gives us. It's not a wholesale replacement. It's another tool and opens up new areas. But from an MCR perspective, I don't work very closely in that. We obviously distribute through them. But yes, we're doing a lot more with that. We're seeing that scale up a lot. Our Sky Sports Plus app distribution is all cloud-based. And like working with IMG, they distribute to us direct into our cloud distribution chain.
Peter, give us BBC R&D's perspective as well. You're obviously at the kind of cutting edge.
Yes, well, you mentioned MCR there, so one of the things we've been working with is other parts of BBC and vendors around Europe, really, on the IBC. If you were at IBC recently, you might have gone to the accelerator zone in Hall 14, where we were presenting an MCR in the cloud project. So the idea there is well, what it says. Maybe Sky have done quite a bit in this space already, but to make it a sort of vendor-neutral approach is going to take a lot more than that. So something we're going to be talking about later, I guess. So that's been a very helpful experiment, which will sort of be helping direct what we do with our MCR operations around our various estates in the country.
Thank you. And Mike, give us a sense from your perspective. Where are we in that journey, would you say?
I'd say we're probably, to steal from Mike, it's very much what tools do you need? IMG, you've got so many different aspects. I'm in the software-based area, but you look at somewhere like Saudi Pro League where they're still very much on OBs because at the moment they don't have the tools in order to think about software-based or to do remote because connectivity is just not there. So I think you've got to look at it on a case-by-case study, and I think nowhere is ready to kind of completely roll it out straight away. And I think your dictated by location, you're dictated by what the end product will be. And I think, if you had connectivity in Saudi Pro League and in Saudi, you could move to a software-based or remote, but it's just not there. I think we're very lucky in the UK where we've got so many different vendors, we've got so many options, so that we can be flexible and we can change to what the federations want us to do.
Perfect, thank you. Paul, can you give us the technology provider's perspective as well? What kind of conversations are you guys having with clients? How mature are they, would you say?
Well, I'd say for the recent use cases, we've been able to do rapid deployment in case of design for the FIFA Club World Cup and other examples such as that. We've had less than 2 weeks' notice to provide the service. So within a matter of a few days, we've done the capture, the design, the build, the deployment, and the test, all within a matter of a few days. And that couldn't have been done before, and that's to deliver multiple formats to multiple clients around the world. And not only that, over and above that, hitting the launch timescales. And I think the reason it was such a late notice was the acquisition of rights came at a very late stage. But we was able to enhance the delivery by innovation. So some of the feeds we was delivering full immersive technology, 180 to Meta and Apple devices. So rapid deployment, been able to spin it up, spin it down. It's got the green credentials, of course. And we've also been able to address lower leagues as well, which couldn't have been able to get into this market. So there's other business revenue streams there. And there's no need to invest in infrastructure anymore. That's what I would say.
I think just following on from you on that one, it's the right still piece is really, it's a real tricky one for us in the technology space, because even in technical operations, we can be as little as 5 days out. The ink is on the paper. So how do you then produce something? So software definitely gives us that flexibility to quickly react to fast changing right stills.
Is that helping you to react quicker, or is it also helping for deals to be done later? Is there a kind of reliance on that, would you say?
It's helping us to react quicker.
Okay, we'll leave that there then. Yeah. Mike, we'll come back to you if we can. Obviously, you guys work across EFL coverage here in the UK. Can you tell us what kind of lessons you might have learned from scaling up? Because you're producing, hundreds and hundreds of games. It's a massive deal. So how have you got about that? What kind of lessons within the context of this discussion have you picked up so far?
I mean, first off, the EFL season, when I first got into it, was described as relentless. It is relentless. I'm kind of looking at my calendar at the moment, and in about 10 days' time, I will get my first 4-day run without an EFL game, which for me is like a little holiday. But the main lessons that we take is it's all about repetition, muscle memory. We have on a Saturday concurrently 33 games minimum that we are going to be cutting across the 3 divisions. Now that is with kind of 8 camera coverage, 4 camera coverage and 2 camera coverage. But with that, you have to kind of look at it as that actually we've got people in, we've got 24 directors, you've got 34 replay ops. People get ill, people drop out. So at any moment, I need to have a running order or a set kind of way of doing something that everybody is interchangeable. Everybody knows if I move them from a League One game to a Championship game, it's exactly the same thing. We're going titles at the same time. They're going to be covering teams out at the same time. Everything is in order for them to do that, so that if anything is a curveball, it's not really a curveball. It's just a slight little change. We're more agile, we're more flexible to that change when anything can happen during a football match. But it's that kind of ingrained repetition. People come and ask me that they haven't been in for 3 weeks. Has anything changed? No, exactly the same running order. Do exactly what you've done before, so that they can just kind of get on with their day. That way, when we do have a problem, we can fix it, the engineers can fix it, and we can troubleshoot where the problems are, because we're so ingrained in that kind of match day running order that we've been doing it now for 7 years, that there's not many new problems that we get and it means that we can kind of follow that troubleshooting. And, you know, we line up with Sky every Saturday, 4 hours before. We can then kind of go through every delivery, because with Sky, we're not only delivering to the cloud for their platform, we're also delivering to the linear channel. So therefore, that's being delivered down, you know, hard fibered lines that we have with Sky. So there's many forms, and obviously Mike can talk, there's loads of departments within Sky. You know, their cloud delivery is in their LEH, but actually the linear is being delivered by the MCR. So if it's on the linear channel but not on the plus channel, well, we need to talk to that person, not that person. So I think we've refined how that is done by keeping to the set kind of muscle memory of it all. And that's the only way we can kind of really live in that ecosystem.
Fantastic, thank you. Mike, we'll just sort of turn our attention to Sky for the moment, if we can. And at last year's FutureSPORT event, you took part in a similar discussion along similar themes and topics. And my colleague Will asked if Sky would put the Premier League into the cloud. And you very diplomatically dodged that question and focused instead on kind of risk and redundancy. What's the status 12 months on? If we asked you the same question, how would you answer it now?
Absolutely, yes. So, as some of you may be aware, this year we've started producing our multi-screen product, and that is a new viewing experience that is showing sort of 3 to 4 matches a time, viewer-led by commentator, and that is being used on, you know, top-tier productions, and it is all software-defined production. That's how we're producing that. You know, it's on the Premier League, it's on WSL. You know, we've recently, at quite short notice, put a Carabao Cup version in, and you know, we are seeing more and more interest from the content teams around that. So, you know, I think that, yes, okay, we're not at a point where we can do a 20-camera OB, but are we trusting software production with our kind of top-tier rights? We are, yes.
Yeah. And what would you say, you know, if you had to pick out some of the key tech elements to that, some of the perhaps most important vendors that you're working with that have really enabled you to make that leap, who would you highlight?
So we'd take that that kind of use case as the example there. You know, we're trying to go for a best of breed approach. We want a really simple user experience for the director. We don't want to make it overcomplicated. So we're using Ross Dashboard. It's got a very simplified operation, and it doesn't matter whether it's Premier League, WSL, Carabao Cup, you know, any other sport that comes along. It's the same operation, and that is hiding the complex workflow in the background, which is, you know, we're using Maverick X and the audio mixer from GV Amp. You know, it's all macro and API driven, and also hooking into our HTML5 graphics. So from that one operational position, we're able to do a lot of very complex actions. And yeah, I think, you know, GV Amp has definitely helped us with some of that stuff, but you know, I think we're always looking for that best of breed kind of approach.
Yeah. But I mean, as Mike said earlier, like making real efforts to simplify, because I guess the possibilities when you move into these software-defined workflows are ultimately endless. So you're having to work hard to try and make sure that you kind of keep a rein on that.
Yeah, and exactly as Mike was saying, you know, we've got to keep it repeatable. We've got to, you know, we can't keep pulling the rug out from the operators. You know, we've got to keep it reliable for them so that they're coming into something that is, you know, a known quantity.
Yeah. Peter, obviously very relevant to this discussion is MXL and the EBU-led Dynamic Media Facility project, which the BBC's part of and which you're co-chair of as well. So for those who aren't familiar, can you give Just a quick kind of overview of that project, progress so far, and perhaps explain why it's relevant.
Yeah, so actually Mike just mentioned GVAMP, so that's an example of a software first platform that can be used on-prem or in the cloud. And within the EBU, so it's the group of European public service broadcasters and their technical representatives, we realise there's sort of potential issues coming down the line with achieving the types of flexibility that we want in a way that doesn't tie us into a single vendor. That is always a big concern for publicly funded broadcasters. So DMF is the idea is to develop a sort of a set of an architecture and a set of principles for how you will put together software first systems in the future to enable scaling, flexibility, resilience, security, and so on. All those abstract nouns that become important. So that's the DMF project. That was a while back. It was launched a year ago. And what's happened in the last few months is one particular crucial element of that, called the media exchange layer, MXL, has come out of that. That was prompted in part by some important first steps that the Canadian Broadcasting Company are looking at for their new facility in Toronto, and some other things there. It's also something that Grass Valley, Larvo, Riedel, Matrox, they all have their own ways of sharing video and audio at high speed between different functions, as we call them. And there's the danger that you're going to see lots of new silos. And if you remember, I think 10 years back, we had ST2110, we had NDI just coming along as well. There was an NMI from Sony. So I got all these technical terms. The everts had something. And eventually they did sort of, the market did sort itself out. But we're trying to be a bit more proactive this time. So that's where, so at IBC last year, last September, there was a great initial demonstration of 4 vendors showing interchange on an AWS cloud using MXL. So basically it's a shared memory, accessing shared memory between different functions.
And you mentioned Canada's CBC. Yeah. So they're looking at making their first deployment for Milan Cortina. Is the BBC kind of looking to do similar? Are you kind of
we are looking. Yeah, I mean, we're certainly doing it in the R&D labs. We're talking with a couple of BBC departments about how we can make best use of fast network connections between our different sites to demonstrate some of the principles there. BBC's got quite a lot of problems to be. Not problems, but things to be getting on with, business as usual at the moment. So this is looking maybe a couple of years in the future, really. But we are expecting to see product at NAB that will start changing things.
And Mike, are these kind of developments that you're keeping a close eye on? Will they help to? Is that going to help to solve some of the problems that you encounter?
Yes, look, I'm definitely keeping a close eye on it. I think the idea of multiple vendors using a common memory sharing kind of platform is absolutely key, because it goes to that best of breed approach, right?
Otherwise, you could go back to SDI, or you could just do some streaming between them, but then you lose a lot of the benefits of actually going to software. Yeah,
and with us, we have done a lot of stuff, but every point you jump through it's an encode and a decode, and you're going to lose something with that. So having this newer kind of way of sharing stuff around, it means that we've got the flexibility to use the right tool for the right job.
I'd kind of echo that from Mike, but I guess from the other added of our kind of headache that we have vendors that know what they're doing, that that we're delivering to streaming platforms and everything like that, and then content afterwards. So giving them a tool to deliver that stuff would be perfect. But we've also got to deliver to the clubs as well, and they can range from there's 72 of them. They can range from ex-Premier League sides that have got full media teams to one man, running it all. He's doing the pitch announcements, he's doing everything like that. So a tool that could help him or her get hold of their highlights, their match feeds better, it makes it a lot easier, and obviously takes a lot of pressure from us as well.
Yeah, I mean, coming from a vendor myself, a software defender, I'm finding more and more service providers and broadcasters not wanting to get tied down to a single vendor solution, that locking. So we do appreciate that. It needs to be modular, from an encode, decode, all the building blocks to ensure it's not only a competitive solution, but also robust, and it gives the flexibility to the service providers and the broadcasters. We're not very much aware of that.
And the other thing we hope is that by sort of providing a set of common building blocks that the vendors can build on, they can then spend their effort and R&D dollars, pounds to euros, to actually distinguish themselves in ways that are perhaps more useful to the end users. So it just moves up the value stack.
And Paul, you talked about vendor lock-in. How significant a threat or challenge or problem is that in this software?
Been in the industry many, many years. So it used to be the strategy probably 10, 15, 20 years ago to try and do the vendor locking, because then you've got the customer continue to upsell. But I think that now the service providers, broadcasters got absolutely wise to this. So we as a vendor, if we want to be competitive in the market, we can't have that kind of strategy. We need to be open, we need to be standards-based. I mean, standards-based within the modular ecosystem. So it allows the broadcaster and the service providers to have that multi-vendor strategy. And it's, initially it can be painful because you're opening yourself up to more competition, but if you don't do that, you're not going to get in the game.
What else needs to be done in order to kind of ensure that that's the landscape and that is the world that these broadcasters
I think moving away and moving more towards the cloud, it's very much this is high value content, right? Live. So it needs to be robust. Back in the old days, on-prem, you'd have dual redundant locations in hardware. This is the cloud. It's somebody else's cloud, and we're all aware of what happens with AWS recently. Okay, that massively affected the US because that was in the US availability zone. But in Dublin and Frankfurt, that was fine. In Europe, it was fine. There was no effect on the BBC. There was no effect on Warner Brothers Discovery, for a fact. So when we at ATEME are building a software as a service solution to service some of these things, we need to think about resilience. So first layer, different availability zones for sure, but also don't be tied to one public cloud provider. Have a multi-public cloud provider strategy, maybe Google, GCP, AWS, Azure, etc. If any of those go down, you haven't got a single point of failure.
Actually, our Slack system went out when AWS went down. So BBC was affected a bit, and
maybe I don't think there's any off-air. I don't think the streams.
Not the on-air stuff.
Not live.
But you do hear things about actually some horror stories about people who've put in resilient solutions but haven't actually tested them in practice. So that's one of the important things there is to do that and make sure you don't lock yourself out accidentally when one region goes down.
So has that changed the kinds of conversations that you might be having when you're making decisions about your strategy for the cloud? I mean, when we spoke before, we talked about that kind of the issues around sovereign providers of cloud services. So has it changed the conversations that you're having, or does it kind of make you alter your approach when you're coming up with these strategies?
In our EBU groups, I know some of our European colleagues in France and Germany and elsewhere, there's a lot of concern there about over-dependence on particular vendors. So I know some of them are looking at starting to use French and German, Scaleway, Stackit, other smaller providers that have actually specialised in this area. So that's part of it. I mean, it's part of a wider sovereignty question. And any way that's happening in the public broadcast space.
Is that more around kind of redundancy and resiliency, or as a sort of?
It's partly that. Obviously, AWS and Google and Azure, they've got a whole load of redundancy features if you choose to use them. But it's also about potential here. Who is controlling American clouds?
Okay, we will move on if we can. Mike, you touched earlier on the need to keep operations sort of simplified and consistent as well for staff. So I just wanted to touch on the kind of human factor to all of this as well. Can you talk us through what kind of skills, and specifically what sort of new skills are required in this sort of environment?
I think for the most part, it's looking at how, at the end of the day, how you can give the tools to the editorial team to make them. And you're coming at it, for us, we are kind of training. I train in the summer every June, July, I'm training another 70 ops in various roles, either as a replay op or as a director. People are coming in and they need to learn. And, we're using Riedl's Simply Live system for us. For us, Mike's using something different, but interestingly, the Carabao Cup games we were feeding through our Simply Lives. But in terms of the human factor, you get people from all sorts of the production template. I've had production assistants looking to move into an editorial role. You've got people who have been VT coords for 15, 20 years in the trucks, and because the trucks aren't going out as much, they're looking to reskill and train in a different area. So I think when it kind of comes to how we're training them, it's a case of looking, can you understand the technical side of the kit? Can you understand, I need to press this button, this does that. If I press this button, it doesn't do that. That kind of thing. Once you kind of do that, and you can kind of see that people can understand it, then the editorial part follows. Because we've done lots of work, even during season, with universities. We work quite closely with Global Academy. They're down the road from us, bringing in students for workshops and seminars, and using the Simply Live kit. They pick up the kit like that. It's crazy. I can put in a 6-camera feed. I'll spend an hour of theory teaching them what you should be doing editorially with the cameras. I'll then spend an hour just running through very, very quickly the general idea of this is how you do a replay, this is how you cut cameras. And then we let them loose, and they just get it. They understand it. They make silly, obviously, we'd be sitting there watching going, oh, wouldn't it do that? But they understand the concept of it. And we recently had an internship with an FTS with 3 students. Now, on Saturday, 2 of them impressed so well on their internship, they haven't even finished their course, but they're coming in as freelancers because they were that good at picking it up during their internship that they are now replay ops on League One games. Whereas, that entry level to, whereas, when I started Sunset Vine, like 15, 16 years ago, I was making tea in the cellar downstairs, and working up, how do you do this, how do you do that?
Whereas, I'm sure it was an excellent cup of tea.
Yeah, it was an excellent cup of tea. But, that's where it comes from, Whereas you have producers who will take that little bit longer, who have been doing it in OB trucks, knowing how it should look,
yeah,
but can't quite get there because they just haven't pressed those buttons before.
Excellent. Sounds like a bright future then. Go on, Mike.
I know we're running out of time, but from a technical operations perspective, where we're kind of the first line team, for us it's having those people that are inquisitive enough to kind of look under the bonnet a little bit. They're not afraid of the fact that it's software. Having being open to that. That's the kind of the key for me. And we do get some skepticism. We do get some people that are a bit I'm not sure it's software. But for every one of those that I come across, I have another 2 members of this team that are going, I really want to get involved in software production. So there is a hunger there.
I'd agree that, and that is key. Is also people being open to kind of muck in and learn each aspect of it. Like, gone as that you have one person doing this set role. They might do 3 different parts to it. We're squashed into, on our championship, 2 people doing a role of 7 or 8 people. You know, there's a director, is also the vision mixer, is also the graphic operator, is also the producer on the game. So that's where it kind of comes down to.
And I guess you've got a sort of new generations of people who've grown up doing their own, doing YouTube and things like that, who've actually probably built their own setups and just are very familiar with software. So I think that's going to sort of come better with time, isn't it?
But yeah, just one final point from me. Because we're moving into the cloud and it's software, one cultural change from an operational perspective is constant updates. It seems like an overhead initially, but the benefits are feature updates, security updates, and it's just that mindset almost on a quarterly basis to keep doing that.
We'll talk.
CI/CD.
Good. Well, listen, it sounds like in this software-based world we're in safe hands at least, but we've run out of time now. So please join me in thanking our panel. Thank you to Peter, to Mike, and Paul. Thank you very much.